Kenny, does Cleveland really have a shot at the American League wild card?
It's an uphill fight, obviously. There's precious few games remaining, but that's why we play them. We play it out and see what happens. And stranger things have happened. I'm just so impressed by what they've done overall. They've had a roller coaster season beyond even what most teams, most contenders have experienced. And here they are, they're hot again. And sweeping the Tigers put them in this position. So I don't rule out anything, but you look at the standings there, it's 1.5 games. The Red Sox are not exactly tearing it up. And more important from the Guardians' perspective, obviously the playoffs is the most important. But to me, 10 games over 500, that's impressive for this team. This is not an offensive juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, one of the people close to the Guardians told me this week, I've never seen a worse offensive team for a contender. So good for them hanging in there. Their starting pitching has been tremendous in September. And do I see it happening? Not necessarily, but 1.5 games is not insurmountable either.
At this time of year, we usually should be talking about the fact that, well, what if they expand the playoffs? The Guardians are easily in. Should the Guardians be in? You said about how inept their offense is. When you watch them on a day-to-day basis, should Major League Baseball have a team like the Guardians in the playoffs?
I would say, Eric, that they're more qualified than the 3 National League pursuers of the Mets, the Diamondbacks, the Reds, and the Giants. Those teams are all around 500. And the fact that they're still in it, I wrote about that this week. That, to me, is much more offensive than the Guardians. They're going to get to 84, 85 wins, I would think, at minimum. 84 has been the lowest in the 3 years of this system. That's the lowest for a qualifier. 2023 Diamondbacks and Marlins both had 84. I'm not offended by an 84-win playoff team. I'd be offended by one that was lower than that. And it could happen in the National League. You see the numbers right there. The Mets are just 5 over with a $340 million payroll. And then the Diamondbacks, Reds, and Giants are all within 1 game of 500 or 1 over. I mean, that, to me, is much more embarrassing than the Guardians, who, for all their offensive shortcomings, are still a team that is winning games without Luis Ortiz, without Emmanuel Clase, both of them under investigation for gambling. So while they might not look like a playoff team, if they steal it from the Red Sox, good for them, and then they would have deserved it.
And without Shane Bieber, who was traded, obviously, is Stephen Vogt doing a better job perhaps this year with the changes and what he's dealing with than the year in which he won Manager of the Year?
It's hard to compare, Alanna. Every season is so different, but this is a really good job. And to expand the conversation a little bit, American League Manager of the Year is fascinating. To me, Joe Espada should be the front runner for all that the Astros have dealt with this season, but you can make a case for John Schneider. You can make a case for Alex Cora if they get there. You certainly can make a case for Stephen Vogt as well, maybe even Dan Wilson in Seattle. So Vogt obviously has done a tremendous job just keeping that team afloat when at one point it looked like they were just cooked. They were 13 and a half out in July, right? So props to him, props to the entire organization, because they do this year after year. And we see this with Milwaukee. We see it to an extent with Tampa Bay. And I will say it again. Yes, low revenue teams like those 3 that I just named operate at a distinct disadvantage. However, it does not preclude them from fielding competitive teams, and that's what these franchises seem to do year after year.
Gave a little Joe Espada shout out there. So let's talk a little bit about the Astros and Isaac Paredes coming back today. You probably know a little bit more about this. Is this a he's 100% and we're ready to bring him back situation, or is this a 80% of Isaac Paredes is better than the replacement and we're in a race here kind of situation? And
Trevor,
how do you?
Guess would be the latter. Without knowing for sure, I can't imagine he's fully there. When he had the injury, if you recall, they said he might be back, he might not. It's not looking great, and I am sure he can't run at full strength. That's never been the strength of his game anyway. But he is much needed right now because of the Yordan Alvarez situation, and he likely is out for at least the regular season with the ankle injury that he has. So Paredes can DH. He steps in nicely in that role. He actually has no other position on the team since the trade for Carlos Correa. So I'm not sure where he is physically. I'd be shocked if he was totally there. I'm sure he would need more time. In a perfect world, it's not a perfect world right now.
Can you talk about the teams that are looking for GMs and how that search is and how does it really impact the teams currently now when they're trying to find a new GM, and in the future, how much a current day GM impacts teams?
Erik, you've played for teams, I'm sure, as has Trevor, that it made a change at GM, even a change at manager. And I don't know that players are necessarily impacted in the moment or in that particular season. They just keep doing their thing. And obviously, a change in manager can have an effect on a clubhouse. We do know that. A change in a GM, I'm not so sure that really has a tremendous reach into the clubhouse. I don't think it does. Now, how impactful can a GM be? Well, there's a reason why Andrew Friedman gets paid the money he does, and other GMs get big dollars as well, because they have a huge impact and they can change an entire organization one way or the other. So yes, that impact is great. And we've seen that time and again. We'll see in this next hiring cycle who gets hired and how this all shakes out. But the Washington situation is certainly interesting. They could hire a president of baseball operations and a GM. I'm not sure that's the way they're going to go. It's under consideration. The Red Sox and Orioles are looking for GMs under presidents of baseball operations. And then you have teams like the Pirates and the Rockies that also could make changes. And I wouldn't be surprised if there are other teams as well where we hear of things that might happen. We know the Cardinals are going to have a change, but that's already been predetermined. Chaim Bloom taking over for John Mozeliak.
Ken, I want to ask you this really quick. Obviously, a lot of news going on with Clayton Kershaw announcing his retirement. We've had several guests on the show today discussing it. I understand you have a good Kersh story. I'm sure, like many of us who have covered him his entire career, there's a lot to choose from.
I have two, and it relates to covering him, not from watching him pitch or anything like that. And the first is 2013, when he was negotiating the big extension he signed with the Dodgers. It turned out to be 7 years, $215 million. That was signed in January of 2014. But I found out that they were talking, and I found out that it was about $210 million. It was in August of that season, I believe. And I remember Clayton Kershaw at that time was a young man. He was 25 years old. He wasn't this presence that he is now. And I saw him in the clubhouse, and I said, hey, can we go out to the dugout? I need to ask you something. And I asked him if it was accurate that they were talking about this kind of deal. And he said, your sources are sick, man. Well, that was confirmation, and I went with it. So I didn't name him as a source, but like when he said that, of course, I was good. And then 2017, NLCS against the Cubs. I don't remember what was going on with him physically at the time, but there was something going on with him. And I wanted to talk to him because maybe he was pitching the next day and he was running off the field. And I said, Clayton, and he blew right past me. And I was like, okay, he doesn't want to talk today. I don't ever take offense at that. I didn't know what was up. And then he pitched, I believe, I don't want to say anything wrong. He pitched the next night. I think he pitched well, or 2 nights, whatever it was. And I saw him after the game, or maybe the next day, and he said, you know why I blew you off, right? And I was not even aware that he knew he had blown me off. He was just kind of walking in, and he definitely saw me and heard me. And he said, I didn't want to talk about what was going on because he was dealing with the physical things that he had dealt with throughout his career. Justin Turner alluded to this in the previous segment. This guy pitched in circumstances, pitched with things physically that a lot of us didn't know about, and a lot of it was unfair. The playoff stuff, he was asked to do too much, and the numbers reflect that, and the performance reflects that. It's not excusing anything, and he wouldn't excuse anything, but they ask too much of him often, with short rest and all kinds of other things as well.
All right, Ken, this is your birthday, but you have to give us a gift before we give you a gift, okay? Can you put the Mount Chavez Ravine of Dodger players? I can't say Mount Rushmore because it's tired. Mount Chavez Ravine of Dodgers players, and where on that list is Clayton Kershaw?
Well, Jackie's on there, of course. I would say Roy Campanella is on there. Kershaw, I would think, is on there. I have to look at this, Erik. You're putting me on the spot, which is fine. I don't have a full picture in my
Sandy.
head right here of all-time Dodger greats. What's that, Alanna?
Sandy Koufax.
Sandy, of course. I was thinking Carl Erskine too. But yeah, Sandy, Kershaw, Jackie, and Campanella. I'm sure I'm missing someone. You can maybe say Steve Garvey. You can maybe say some others as well. And Dodger fans can start screaming at me right now, but that's who immediately comes to mind.